Welcome to the stage. My name is Allison. I'm the Chief Engagement Officer here at KDHX, and I'm so happy to see all of you today. This conversation that we're doing in conjunction with the St. Louis Blues Society, I think is really important, and it's going to be really informative, so I'm excited to hear everybody's thoughts and feelings. Couple of housekeeping things. We are recording this, so if you have a question or comment, please wait until myself or Jeremy Siegelmoss makes his way over to you with a microphone so everyone can hear and we can get it on the record. I want to say thank you to St. Louis Blues Society, Jeremy and Alonzo especially, for helping in the planning of this, and also our own crew here at KDHX. It really takes all of us to make these things happen, so I'm so thankful to work at a place that we can have these conversations. Thank you. You want to say a few words?
How about another hand for Allison, folks? And Kelly Wells and Darian. KDHX really made this happen. The St. Louis Blues Society have been around for over 30 years. I have kind of taken the reins in the last 4 years or so, and we do compilation CDs and the blues letter and education programming like this. But we really haven't had a stage, and now there's a stage, and KDHX really made that happen, so very grateful to them. And also to all of our guests and Dr. Roz, who will be coming up next. Also, housekeeping for us, the St. Louis Blues Society is a membership-based organization, so if you get a chance on your way out, we have membership forms so you can get the CDs and the blues letters and whatnot. If you have any questions, just come up to us afterwards. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Dr. Roz, who I had the pleasure of working with at the National Blues Museum. Many of you know her already, and she'll be the moderator for today.
Okay, first of all, thank you very much for coming out on this very cold Sunday afternoon. And I do want you to know I am so glad that you're here, because as an audience, you are participants in this conversation. Okay, and before I really go any further, I want to at least bring our panelists to the stage, and after that, I want to give you all an outline which will provide the order of this program so that we can, stay focused and be on the same page. What I want most of all is that for us to be honest and to be open, and if there's any disagreements, let's respect each other first and foremost. Okay, so let me go ahead and get started by bringing our panelists to the stage. I'll do a very brief introduction of each, and after that, then I will go into the order of the program, okay? And once I finish the order of the program, then we'll start with the discussion of the panelists, and from there, get more of you all involved in the exchange. So let me go ahead and get started now with our first very distinguished panelist. I would like to introduce Mr. Bernie Hayes, okay? As you can see on the slide, we have recognized Bernie Hayes as an entrepreneur, a broadcaster and media professor at Webster University, and I am so pleased to have his tremendous experience and a person of his caliber and standing in the blues and music entertainment industry as a part of this conversation. The next person up is going to be in alphabetical order. The next person up would probably be Jimmy Hinds. Jimmy Hinds, please. Jimmy Hinds is also an entrepreneur and musician, internationally recognized bass guitarist, if I can say that, and of course I expect so much from his considerable background in music, and also his candor, I really hope will help drive, today's conversation. The next person up is Marsha Evans, okay? Marsha Evans is the author of Hip Hop to the Blues, which works a lot with our young people. It's a curriculum, and I'm just excited because I've known Marsha since the early 70s when she, along with Charles Kreth and myself, were inducted into the Persona Players, and as one of the co-writers and director at that time of Persona Players, We worked together on Variations in Black Theater, which was a musical and dramatic anthology of our Black culture. So, of course, Marsha and I go way back, and I appreciate having her here because she understands the performance arts from way back. And last but not least is Uvee Hayes. Uvee Hayes brings so much soul to her music as a soundtress as well as a recording artist. She has recorded so many various songs, of which one in particular I really enjoy listening to the CD. In the Mood? Am I correct? Okay. All right. And again, like I said, I wanted to keep the introduction short. So if you all can have a seat, please. What I now want to do is to go through the order of the program, okay, for today. Now that I just briefly introduce our panelists, I want to say that after they're seated now, I can go ahead and say what I next want to do is to get 2 volunteers from the audience to get you all immediately involved and tuned in. And the first 2 volunteers from the audience, you, our audience participants, each will actually read aloud for us a quote. Okay, the first quote is from James Baldwin, and the second one is from Jordan Peele. Okay, and then after that, I'll need 4 more volunteers from you as audience participants to actually look at the slides that we prepare. Each slide for the next 4 terms. One will deal with, of course, defining what stigma is, and then another slide will define another keyword that deals with being authentic, and of course, the third one deals with culture, and the last one should deal with tradition. So I need 4 volunteers to read aloud those definitions, because I want to be sure that we're all on the same page and that we understand what some of these key words and their definitions mean to today's topic, which is the first conversation dealing with stigma of the blues, so that we can all honestly deal with and know a little bit about the terminology or the words that we want to use to keep us, again, focused or on the same page. Okay? After we do the last of the 4 terms to be read aloud, then I'll go back to the panelists and have them to take up to 25 minutes to talk among themselves about their personal and professional experiences as it pertains to stigma of the blues, as well as the roadblocks and how they have been able to cope with that. So let's go ahead and get started. If you would please, let's bring up the first quote. May I have a volunteer from the audience? Okay, we have someone here, and please stand up. I do know this gentleman, by the way. Okay, Terry Harden, you want to come over, please? Give us your name, and, in your case, I happen to know that you're with the National Blues Museum.
My name is Terry Harden. I'm the operations manager at the National Blues Museum.
Okay.
It was though as we were a picture trapped in time. This has been happening for hundreds of years. People sitting in a room waiting for dinner and listening to the blues. James Baldwin.
Okay. And of course, those of you should know, or I hope know, that James Baldwin was not only a very distinguished, internationally recognized writer, but he was also a social commentator who was very involved in the civil rights movement, especially in the 60s. Okay, the next quote, please. May I have a volunteer to read that? From the audience, you all supposed to participate now. We're getting ready to set the environment here so that you all can get ready for this exchange. I wanted to make sure that you all know that this includes everyone that's in this room as a part of a conversation. Okay, let's go ahead. Your name, please.
Hi, I'm Lily Dodenhoff, and I perform in theater here in St. Louis and in New Orleans, and I played jazz in high school. So it's my truth. It's a lot of people's truth, and it's one that was missing from the conversation. Jordan Peele.
Okay. How many of you all have heard of Jordan Peele? Okay. All right. Well, Jordan Peele has been nominated for an Oscar for screenwriting and directing Get Out. So we thought, too, to include his quote at this time. Let's move, and I need now another set of volunteers. The first key term, if I can have a volunteer to read it. I see a couple of hands going up. Okay, one back there, please.
Stigma, a mark of shame or discredit, a stain.
Very good, thank you. Okay, let's pull up the next key term and another volunteer, please. I see another hand, all right.
Authentic, worthy of acceptance or belief as conforming to or based on fact, not false or imitation, real, actual, true to one's own personality, spirit, or character.
And Ken, you did not introduce yourself, neither did the other man that was volunteering.
I'm Kenneth Calvin, I'm a visual artist.
And he's also a very distinguished founder of Creative Coalition and Zuka and all kinds of art guilds here in St. Louis. And thank you very much, Ken. And the other gentleman, I didn't get your name, sir.
Charles Johnston. Charles Johnston.
Okay.
And former lab tech, currently retired, been following the Bottoms Up Blues Gang for several years. So that's how I got involved in all of this.
All right, well, thank you, thank you. Okay. Let's go to the next key term, please. May I have a volunteer? Okay, I see a hand, a couple of hands. I think he is first. Okay, thank you.
Nick Acquisto, music director here at KDHX.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Culture, the customary beliefs, social forms, and material traits of a racial, religious, or social group. Also the characteristic features of everyday existence shared by people in a place or time, and or enlightenment and excellence of taste acquired by intellectual and aesthetic training.
Thank you. All right. And the last key term, may I please have a volunteer, Fred, to read it aloud? I have a person right up front, right here. Okay.
My name is Curtis McNeil, I'm past president of Grand Center 5000 Toastmasters. Perception, a result of perceiving, observation, a mental image, concept. Physical sensation interpreted in the light of experience and a capacity for comprehension.
All right, thank you. Now let's get started, and as the young people say, it's time for us to get real. And Marsha, you have a saying for the young that the young people would say is what?
Keeping it 100.
Okay, let's do this. All right. Now it's time for our panelists, please, to share with us your experiences, personally and professionally, as to the stigma that's associated with the blues, as well as how you have had to encounter the roadblocks and how you cope with that, okay? So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, Bernie, I'm looking right at you.
Oh, I see you
right,
were.
Thanks.
Yeah. Growing up on the Chicago South Side, I heard a lot about the blues, and the people in my neighborhood, you know, it was such a segregated city, Chicago, especially during the 30s and the 40s and 50s when I was growing up. And we were all in one neighborhood. Everybody was concentrated in one neighborhood, you know, from school teachers to doctors to lawyers to the laborer. And the thing that we heard about the blues was that it was beneath our standards. Everybody wanted to say they listened to jazz. Everybody said they listened to more or less soul at the time. But anyone who listened to the blues was below our standards, more or less, and it wasn't right. I learned later what a wonderful genre this is, what a historical genre that it is, and how proud I am to be related to it. My association is that being a black man in America, I'll never get over it. But as long as you keep making movies like Cadillac, you know, what is it, Cadillac Records? Yes. And What's Love Got to Do with It? You'll always have a false perception of what the blues and the soul really is, especially blacks in America.
Yes.
Okay, let's hear from you, Jimmy.
My first exposure to the blues, I have to say, came from my parents, from my dad. I have to give it to my dad. In my parents' house, most weekends, they gave the card parties where their friends came over and played cards, gambled. And what I would do, I didn't allow them to drink and handle the record player, so I would DJ the blues for them. And I'm about 15 years old at that time. Yeah. And I come out of there, man, in the morning with $45, $50 in my pocket. But the stuff they had me, that they would pay me to play. In other words, Marsha would give me 50 cents to play her favorite blues tune. Uvee would get tired of it after about 3 plays. And she'll hit her with her 50 cents. Yeah. Take that off, boy, and play. And I learned so much about those records I was playing. Now, Mom was she could take the blues, but not Daddy. Daddy was Delta. Daddy was like us, Uvee. Mom was some Book Benton, Dinah Washington violins and stuff. That was cool. That kind of rounded out my musical education and listening. But Dad was hardcore Delta, Wolf, Muddy. So most of my education was happened at that time. The beginning of it happened at that time. Later on, we'll talk about later on in a minute.
All right, then. Let's go to Marsha, and we'll move to Uvee after that.
Well, the first song I wrote was a blues song. And I was born in 19, we're not going to talk about it, but that was... I'm married to this gentleman, for those of you who didn't know. We were born in that same not going to talk about a year. So we, and didn't live that very far apart, did we not? No, we really weren't, just blocks apart. Which meant our households were in many ways the same. I want to say maybe I was 5 or 4, and it just, we just got in our piano, and I got on that piano and wrote my first blues song. And it's actually called My Daddy's Blues Song. This song is my daddy's song. This song is my daddy's song. I ain't gonna play it all night long, 'cause this song is my daddy's song. I love my daddy, I don't need maybe. This song is my daddy's song. I had to do that. I've been feeling that all day. I had to do that.
I have.
No, I really had to do that. But in our household, there were all kinds of genres of music played. However, my mom and dad were musicians. My mom was actually a singer, and she actually excelled in opera, classical music. My father played with anybody and everybody. We had all kinds of musicians coming to our home, and a lot of those included blues musicians. My grandmother, who kept us every weekend because my dad was gigging and my mother would go with him, I can envision her playing in this little side bedroom, which was actually the music room, and she was playing the blues, and her boyfriend was playing the saxophone, so I had a lot of that infused as well. You could walk up and down our neighborhood and hear the blues playing, you know what I mean, on the 45s or the 33s, or I'm really telling my age, the 78s, but I love it. So glad I was around to experience it. So, it's you're born with it. You're either born with it or you're not. Thank God it's something God gave to me. And I'm going to shut up and let Uvee take it from there. We'll get back.
Well, I'm last.
But not least.
No. let me just say to you that I'm from the deep South. Anybody in here from the South? I'm from Mississippi.
All right.
I have been around the blues all of my life, since I could remember. First of all, my mom had a juke joint.
Real deal.
At the age of 8, I could just sit in my room and hear the blues.
Yeah.
Coco Taylor, you name it.
Yeah.
It was it.
Yeah.
And they juked all night. So I have exposure that I cannot begin to tell you. Even when I went off to college, blues, I went to school in the Delta of Mississippi. Blues was there, the radios. I've always been around the blues. I must tell you that Howlin' Wolf's family was from my hometown, Noxubee County, Mississippi. So the South is the blues.
Yes.
And it has always been, and even now today, when I go back, I hear the blues, blues, blues. It's just the way it is. I love the blues. I've always loved the blues. People say to me, well, you don't look like you sing the blues. And I look and I say, well, how am I supposed to look? You know, it's crazy. But that's a stigma. You know, I don't know how it's supposed to look. I don't know. But anyway, that's a way of life for me, and I just love it. So thank you.
Okay. Bernie?
Yes. Jimmy and I were talking in the green room, and we had the same idea. I first came to St. Louis with Little Walter. The first time I came to St. Louis, I was riding Little Walter. But Jimmy also says, ask you how do you define the blues? Because the Wolf the other day say, the blues is when you don't have enough money to pay for your rent, you know. And Son House would say, you got the blues if your lover done left you. You know, that's his definition of the blues. Muddy Waters says, you got the blues, man, if you can't get a job. So there all different definitions of the blues and what different people consider what the blues is. And we have to define that also, because everyone, if you're sitting here hungry right now and don't have a place to go, you got the blues. You know, so this is what we want to define, what is the blues and what you thought the blues was.
You know, I do want to interject and say that based on my personal experience, my grandfather was a Mississippi, Delta bluesman. And when he met my grandmother, she told him that he was going to have to give up the blues because it was the devil's music in order to marry her. And he did for a little while, you all. But after they had been married a little while, of course, he started going back out on the weekends. But it's this stigma, which I want you all to address, about the devil's music, and also this negative labeling that goes with the blues, even from the time when it, was brought into existence by black and, enslaved, oppressed people of the South. So I want to, get us moving in this direction so we can honestly look at how this stigma that's associated with the blues based upon this so-called hierarchy of music where classical music is good at the top, and then somewhere after that you get jazz, that's cool, and then you may hear a little bit about rhythm and blues and soul and even rap music. But when you get to the blues, it's at the very bottom of the hierarchy. So let's talk about why blues is at the very bottom, and how stigma and race drives that positioning.
The black church had a lot to do with that. The black preachers saying that this is the devil's music. I mean, this is ingrained into you. It's way down in your psyche. You're in a sanctum, be just full. You don't want to hear the blues because it's the devil's music. Then you say, wow, I have really been brainwashed, have I not? It's just that some of the preachers who were taught that, especially from the Church of God in Christ and the Holiness churches, they really believed that the devil had met at the crossroads, and his boy sold his soul. And the Double instigated all these different lyrics and gyrations and perceptions of what the blues is. Mm-hmm. It's something we've got to overcome. It is a stigma. It's a lie. It's an untruth. And the blues is beautiful. The blues is a history of a people. Yes. The blues is a history of a continent. The blues is a history of everybody. Everyone. Believe it or not, I don't want to get too deep into this, Roz. But,
no, but go ahead and be real. Okay, you can get deep. You got a few minutes to do that.
Okay. But if Africa was the mother, the creation of mankind, that means everybody in here is African. Originally African, and that's part of the blues, and the blues came from that soil.
Yeah, it's really interesting. A lot of people who one might see Saturday night bluesing it up, if you will. Sunday morning. Same people. Some didn't have time to change clothes. Or put on some more perfume or that sweet water so you wouldn't smell that devil juice on their breath when they sang in the choir Sunday morning. There was a lot of that. I experienced that. Of course, I was too young to be, in the joints and that kind of thing, but I had an aunt who liked to party on Saturdays. Saturday night, she played the blues, a lot of it. My whole family was musical, but every Sunday morning, she was sitting behind that organ playing it. Boy, would the pastor let her have it. He would let her have it. But this thing about devil music, as Bernie says, it's really, really, it's really deep down something that we as a people have, just taken it in and can't get rid of it.
We've absorbed it,
yeah. Yeah, it's totally absorbed, and for some reason, it's that stigma. We can't get rid of it.
There's another stigma that I found with the blues. If I would pick one of you and ask you to recite the lyrics to a certain blues song, you would know them. All kind of wrong language. You don't know what they're saying. And so I discovered that people enjoy the blues a whole lot better when they know what the words are. The average one of you don't know what the words are because of the country dialect.
Give us an example. The song we were listening to.
Uvee, Wang Dang Doodle.
Okay.
Tell automatic slim.
Tell razor toting Jim.
Tell butcher knife toting Nanny. Tell fast talking Fanny.
Okay.
We gonna pitch up.
Now those are
down at this.
They're just words that rhyme to you guys. Yeah. They mean something totally different to us.
To cooter crawling.
Those names, cooter crawling red. That means red stays crawling with the cooties. Oh. You know what the cooties are? Huh? What do you mean, Do you know what the cooties are?
Tell us, Jimmy.
Red steak crawling with the crabs. See, if you know what they're saying in these songs, you would endear it a little better.
Yeah.
So then, in essence, we're talking about part of understanding the blues, part of the culture.
Yes.
Is dealing with coding. So as musicians, from your cultural experience that you're decoding your experience so that others through your music can enjoy it. Right. But on another layer in the cultural experience is how do people perceive what it is that they're hearing?
Right.
Yeah, because when they wrote that, it wasn't a matter of coding. They were writing their everyday life experiences.
Speak, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, another thing, the genre keeps changing. You know, it just used to be the blues. Now you've got country blues. Now you've got Delta blues. Now you've got urban blues. Yeah. We just knew the blues. You know, and I think all this was done, these categories were created for monetary sake, and also for on racial issues too. You see, because it just used to be the blues. Just the blues, no matter who sang it. It was the blues, it was the blues. But now you got, like I say, it's categorized and it's monetarized. And we got to really deep into that.
Now, your technical approach to the blues as a musician, the musical progressions 1, 4, and 5. We got many musicians out there? Any?
All right.
So you know what 1, 4, and 5 is? Okay. Basically, the blues is not just the songs that we're talking about with the deep lyrics and there are happy blueses. That's another stigma with the blues. It's about being downtrodden and drinking whiskey, and there are happy blues. Fellas, there's been so many blues written about these cars that we drive. Not running or running too well. There's a blues about anything that you can think of. You can find a blues song about. So there are happy blues too. But you know when you hear it, whether it's jive or not. If it's jive, don't call it blues. It's a bunch of jive. And you know jive when you hear it. Yeah, that's one thing I have to say about the blues. The blues is, that's where the preachers run into a problem selling the devil thing on us. Most blues tunes are honest.
Yes. Very true. Yeah.
Most blues lyrics are honest. If you haven't been through what that song is talking about, wait around, you will. Wait around, you'll go through it.
You know, I'm looking at a little reminder. I pulled out a DVD, and it was titled Crossroads, a film that was released in 1986, and starred or featured Ralph Macchio and Joe Seneca. And I remember from the film, that's why I had to pull it out and look at it again. The character, Eugene Martone, was studying classical guitar at Juilliard. And he had to do a presentation before his college professor, and it was a classical guitar piece, but he ended it with on a blues note. And after class, the professor pulled him into his office, and they were talking about it, and the professor says to him, "You cannot serve two masters. You know, either it's classical music or blues music." Then he goes on to further saying, I will quote and pull this up. He says to him, "Excellence in primitive music," referring to the blues, "is cultural. You have to be born to it." So now I'm going to toss this back over to you, because I feel that there are several words in those two short sentences that deal with the negative connotation, you know, being primitive music, going back to being at the lower part of the hierarchy. Also the piece that is cultural, and the fact that you have to be born to it. So let's get some
In that
reaction.
movie you just mentioned, Joe Seneca, if you notice the person playing the part of the devil, how sinister he looked, how dark they made him, you know, and that was also penetrating your psyche. You know, I mentioned Cadillac Records, how they made Howlin' Wolf looks like a real food, made Little Walter look like a drunkard. None of that was true, because I grew up with these people. I was with Chess Records. You know, these images, they make you think they're cultural. They're not cultural. They're racial. This is what it's about. Someone wrote those parts. Someone definitely wrote those parts for a reason.
Yes.
And the reason wasn't to make us look good.
No.
I'll stop there.
If you don't have the history, then what you see is what you will believe.
Yeah, they give you one.
That's why panels like this is so important. Let me just tell you what happened to me. This was a black university. I got a scholarship there to be in the choir. I went, I was happy, and they asked me to be on a talent show. I was on the talent show, and I sang a song, a blues tune called The Man Is Down on Me. And the choir director kicked me out of the choir. She says, this is a classical choir. We don't even we don't do that. So, you know, I don't know. It's just something that we need to try to overcome.
What she was taught. She was taught that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
See, the Delta Devils, may as well say who it was, Valley State. Mississippi Valley State University.
We have a lot to do, a long way to go.
A lot of work to do. And you're challenged to do it. You're challenged to make it right, seek the truth. Truth is the most important word you can come up with today, I think.
So in essence, now I am going to open it up because audience participants, you are here to participate. You can now start to exchange how you think and feel about what we just said, dealing with this labeling, this negative connotation that's associated with blues music. But not only that, the people who, because of their skin color and because of their culture, how others perceive them as musicians and as people who have a culture. Because there was something recently that was shared with me. In fact, I'm looking over at Alonzo. I'm going to put you on the spot, Alonzo. Townsend, and that is an article that was written a couple of years ago, 2016, I do remember, dealing with white people, the blues, and cultural appropriation. And I told Alonzo, I said, you know what? I had to read that article a couple of times. I said, because the person who wrote that article, he started off talking about Elvis Presley and Hound Dog, and then he went to Mama Thornton singing Hound Dog,
Yeah.
and then he started to talk about, well, you know, it was written by two Jewish, composers. He said, so in essence, what are they talking about? Blues only belong to black folks. In essence, that's what you get out of that. And I sit back and say, there's something that's still not being addressed here. And that is
The truth.
thank you. Then I started thinking, I said, you know what? And Marsha, this goes back to our experience in theater arts and,
Yes.
Music and all. And I'm thinking, I said, why is it that when other people start to write about us, they tend at the same time to discredit us or devalue and belittle our contributions and or tear down our culture, make it non-existent. So now I'm gonna open it up, and I'm looking right at you, Alonzo, so we can get this conversation started on a real note, okay? Let's be honest and open, let's deal with this. So Alonzo, you want to respond so we can get everybody else involved in this conversation?
Hey guys, my name is Alonzo Townsend. For those who don't know me around the city, I'm the son of the late, great Mississippi Delta bluesman Henry Townsend.
Muse.
I'm also a big torch runner of the blues myself, along with my partner Marquise Knox. We form Knox Entertainment as well. And I'm pretty much the voice of the blues. You'll see me at Big Muddy, so all that good stuff. The reason I shared that article with you to shed light on how this article situation began is because someone, another musician well known here in the city, a bluesman, his name is Mike Zito, he moved out to California, originally shared that post on social media. That post generated so much response among myself, Marquise, Quantavious down in Atlanta, who's another young up-and-coming bluesman underneath Taj Mahal, Kingfish, Kirstone Ingram, a lot of young bluesmen in addition to a lot of older bluesmen came on that post, and they shared so much that was wrong with that article. So the reason that I sent it to you was during that exchange, Marquis said, I really hope that I'm able to talk about this article at the panel discussion, which will be on the 25th, the future discussion. And Marquis will be here along on the panel as well. And he said, I really hope I'm able to discuss this article because, like you just said, there's so much wrong with this article with an author that's trying to address something that is very important to us, or something that we've already structured here, but trying to discuss an ongoing issue with so much whitewashed information in the article that it tended to kind of tear away from what the real discussion was, which was appropriation. What is the difference of appropriation and respect and heritage of what we are accustomed to and what we have grown and have formed? Those are our roots, and we want to know how we are able to nurture our roots without tarnishing our roots. A big thing with, and I'm also here to kind of voice for Marquis, but a big thing that started this discussion, that I'll be frank with everybody, is a lot of Marquis's Facebook posts. If you guys are friends with Marquis Knox, you guys know the post that I'm referring to. Marquis is first and foremost, Marquis Knox is a student of the game. There's very few and foremost that come not only in our heritage, not only in music, but in life itself, with someone that wants to study and understand not only his culture, not only what he's playing, but he wants to understand the world around it and how it continues to form, how it continues to move. There's nobody I know that knows this game other than him. The next person I can think of was my father, and that's a big statement. So he's very vocal about the heritage, he's very vocal about the roots, and he's very vocal about how you celebrate and continue and nurture those roots. There are a lot of faces that are associated with blues today that do not represent what the blues is. I will not put any names out there because I don't disrespect those men, because what they're doing is making a living for themselves. So I will not disrespect them by putting examples out, but there are artists that are the face of the blues that have nothing to do with the culture. They have never stood up for any injustice or any right that has happened. That has happened not only to our community, not only to our culture, but to our music. You have to understand what it is before you take off and you run with it and you grow it. That's one of the biggest problems with an artist like Marquis, but few artists will not vocalize that. Some artists will say, well, hey, that's the way of the machine, that's the nature of the beast. I'm just gonna play the cards I'm dealt, and I'm just gonna be an artist, I'm gonna shut up and I'm gonna play. And that's hard for people like Marquis, that's students of the game, of people, he studied people like these four magnificent people, because if you utter the words shut up and play, that stings them. A real person will understand how heavy those words are. So when you, as a young man, just take off and just play, and you don't vocalize what the roots really are, you're doing a disservice to these, you're doing a disservice to people like my father, and you're doing a disservice to yourselves, because the history does not grow that way. It gets stuck, it gets snuffed out. And that's what the mission is, to make sure that we don't snuff out the roots of what the blues really are, what it really is. If you snuff those away, then it's just rock. And no disrespect, but that's what it turns into when you forget what the roots are. So that's what the discussion, that's why it's really important. That's why that article is really important, because some things in the article was true. And some things is a thing that I use to examples all the time. I had a one quick example is someone I work with and I love her to death, and her name was Sherry. And she's the biggest Elvis fan in the world. And I used to always tease her back. I'll zing her back because I'd be like, that thief. And just be like, get out of here. And that's because, and that's one of the things that the articles did ring true on. And I like that for it. But also, we have to discuss the things that are wrong about it and how you can't snuff out what we're trying to expose. And what we're trying to expose is what the stigma is, what the roots are, and how to continue to nurture those roots.
Very good. Thank you. Now.